or a correspondence between our physical body and our spiritual body. And that's how it ends up being a conduit for our consciousness to be able to have this growing relationship with those inner levels and with like what the divine is, you know, turning our lives over to that guidance. And like, we do need to be embodied, you know, like it is through our body. There's this perfect mirroring there that is just, you know, gosh, talk about like a so much to unpack there, but that's something you can explore sometime. There's so much.
Man, like how many bodies? We talked about land too. What is a land mass called?
And the body. Yeah.
A body of water, a body of land. But on that body lives a bunch of different organisms, a bunch of different people who have a body. Yeah. And they have multiple bodies within them.
Yes.
Jesus was considered to be he had the fullness of the Godhead within him. Like he
bodily.
Had all bodily, all of the gods. So when Christ is living in you, it's not just dear Jesus. Dear Jesus is it's everything. It's every order as you need it. When you go to them, don't think about what you're going to say. I'm going to speak through you and I'm going to tell you what to say. Like the more you read that and the more you understand that, you start reading the exploits of the disciples and Paul. Yeah. All this and more coming up on this episode of the TruthSeekah podcast. Really quick, before we get started, if you are blessed by this ministry, if you're blessed by this platform, anything that I bring to the table, I ask you to partner with me via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and you unlock rewards, my entire discography of music, webinars, meditations, weekly hangouts, and so much more. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Go check it out.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe.
Now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at truthseekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. Excited to be with you. Got a awesome conversation lined up. We've been chatting before we started recording, and as always, I don't like to talk to the guest before we are recording or go live because it's always just good stuff that's captured off air. And I was like, no, we just need to record. So listen, you guys are in for a treat. The best conversations are people that you want to talk to and you find common interest and commonality, and we roll these ideas off of each other. So we're going to do that today. My guest is Chelsea Odhner. Chelsea, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. It's really fun to get to connect with you, to meet you. I mean, we only just met, but in anticipating this interview, I just have a lot of energy around it. I don't know what's going to unfold, but it feels exciting, and I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, great to have you. You are the president of the Swedenborg Foundation?
Yeah, I'm the vice president of our publishing department right now. And so I know people who are watching have met Curtis Childs, who also is a part of the Swedenborg Foundation. And there's kind of two arms to our organization where we produce the video content, the Off the Left Eye YouTube channel, but then we also produce translations, fresh translations of Emanuel Swedenborg's works that you can kind of see them on the shelf behind me. They're those purple covers. Those are the fancy cloth back ones. where, you know, Swedenborg was writing in Latin in the 1700s. And I was thinking about it, and I think this is the first time since the late 1700s that a fully fresh, modern translation, scholarly translation of Swedenborg's works has ever been done. So they're actually sort of more accessible than they have ever been. And we also, you know, some translations had been done in the early 19th century, and you know, it doesn't read easy to a modern audience. Yeah. And so, but now with these fresh translations, so that's, I oversee the production of those. But that's kind of recent. For many years, I was working with Curtis, just doing video production and writing content for Off the Left Eye. So you sort of get both. You get the fun videos, but then you can go diving into the content for yourself if you want to explore it. We give away free downloads on our website, Swedenborg.com. So that's what we do. We just sort of have a big Swedenborg party around here.
Heck yeah, so awesome. And I always enjoy watching the videos and talking to Curtis, and I'm excited to talk to you and just looking up the life and history of Emanuel Swedenborg and how it's relevant, you know, and antiquity and the past, how the past repeats itself is something very interesting. And I know he wrote about that, he talked about that, and we're experiencing that. That's why this information is coming forth now. That I think people have been maybe gatekeepers and holding it back. I don't know if they didn't think that the lay people should understand it or could understand it, or maybe in some weird ways, some of the priests and the higher ups didn't understand it. I don't know, but it definitely feels like this gatekeeper type thing. But but it's coming forth now.
I know, yeah.
And there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And the work that you guys are doing, and so many people who are open, that's all it's about, right? Being open and not having it figured out, and allows you to experience it and to expand. And you mentioned, it's in my mind, you mentioned the bones of the prophets, right? And building upon that, and the bones would cry out. And even the vision of Ezekiel, how the bones would take on new flesh, but it's the old bones, but now they're in new flesh, which is like this reiteration of something in the past that's I'm back kind of thing. And I think we're experiencing that in the work that you guys are doing, and just the collective in general, man. It's amazing to be on the planet right now.
It is totally amazing, and that's something that I love especially about Swedenborg, and like having spent so much time in his books, and yet, you know, living in the world today, I love the crossover. It kind of feels like it's this like sort of superpower I have to know Swedenborg's works, but then like be observing the way, you know, just all the crossover between the different like Buddhist practices and yoga philosophy, and then even like modern psychological approaches to health, understanding the sort of body, mind, spirit system. Like Swedenborg just feeds right into that. And you were saying like, you know, he was writing back then. And I think he, like so many people who are sort of visionary like he was, where it was like, he's writing sort of having a certain audience immediately in mind, because he's like, well, he's publishing to the public of his day, but he knows he's looking way far ahead, you know, like could he have even anticipate, I don't know if he knew, but he knew there was something huge, you know, that this sort of like collective awakening that, you know, is certainly a process, but I feel like it's something we're all a part of, and it feels true. It feels like it's happening. Yeah,
it's coming back, because like in the early days, and there's some Gnostic stuff out there about this, like early Christianity, about you know, syncretism and seeing you know, many different terminologies and languages for saying the same thing. And Christianity was like a part of that, maybe even is that, right? But now it's turned into something else. It's its own thing that isn't Buddhist philosophy, that isn't you know, New Thought and the science of the mind and those things. It's separate, you know, that's secular, this is sacred kind of thing. And someone who is a visionary, who's able to kind of, you're studied in a little bit of everything, you see the similarities. Like religion has kind of taught us to see what makes us different and fight on those differences. But like, I think the spirit of those prophets and the patriarchs, right, is begging us to study what makes us the same and how we are the same, and that's coming back. So, for you,
well, I have to just jump in and say,
yeah, go ahead.
You and I were talking just before about how we're both musicians or produce music, and I think there is something so powerful about music that just it does cross all of those boundaries. You know, like you are spoken to through music, no matter what your, you know, what necessarily beliefs are making up your mind, and so it is that particular way that you can put flesh on those bones and have them, you know, sing in the way that they want to ring out. And so. Well,
you see, you know, speaking of the prophets and the book of Psalms, right? Those are a book of songs, really. They were to be sung, and these melodies and these tunes stick in your head. It's like a jingle. Like as soon as you hear that first note, you know the song. I mean, there's television shows on Name That Tune, and they play one snippet, boom, one tone. You're like, oh, I know what it is, right? Yes. So going back to the Psalms and learning this deep spirituality tied to music, and we're a part of that, like you said. But the prophets, there was a school of prophets, and there's a couple of scriptures where like they show up on the scene and all of them are holding instruments. And I really love to see them like in my mind with their instruments and knowing the power and knowing cadence and knowing how to, you know, work the spirit or, you know, conjure these kind of terms that I'm open to. It's amazing to see the link with the prophetic and the things of the spirit with the Bible, which kind of gets left behind, and that was just for those people kind of thing.
Yes, well, and so with this album, Confident Hope, that comes from that line that says, "May the bones of the 12 prophets send forth new life from where they lie, for they comforted the people of Jacob and delivered them with confident hope." I also love the 12 prophets, like that number 12 kind of meaning like all of them, like all kinds of prophecy. And so on this album, I have a track dedicated to different prophets and making songs out of their words, because I just felt inspired the same way that what you just described, of like, these prophets are describing so much struggle, so much turmoil, you know, such intensity of what they go through, and they're writing it down, and it just feels like it wants to be a song, you know, because like music helps you process that, those, you know, the tough times and intense stuff that we go through. And especially sort of like, I feel like the prophets to me describe our inner landscape, our like, they maybe are saying what's happening in their life, but it's like describing what's going on inside of us. And so there's a mirror there. And that's kind of what I felt like I was doing with these songs, was like creating a bridge to help people, or like, you know, just to share the sort of fun of that connection of these mirrors, of these words with our inner struggle.
Yeah, it could, because it's so easy just to, you know, modern culture to say, oh, that's just religious or church music or church stuff. It's like, no, like I like to look at, you know, some of the modern poets of our day, right? The modern philosophers, like, and I'll throw a name out there, Tupac, right? Like very emotional struggle, praise, like, my enemies are coming after me and trying to kill me. Please, God, help me. I got money now. Like all of these things that he's somebody like him who's very much in his emotions, right? And not just one emotion, not just depressing music, but like all of the emotions in his music. People say he was bipolar. Yeah, he experienced every one of the emotions, right? And he wrote about it and he sung about it. And when I read the Psalms, like, I really feel King David is like a journal. Lord, they're coming to get me. I need help. Send help soon. If not, I'm done. It's like, you know, it's not just some church music or, you know, to be sung in you know, happy by a choir. Like some of this stuff was some deep, agonizing, painful music, you know, but it's real because these emotions are real.
Yeah, and that, like, even in the Psalms, it is sort of funny how quickly it can turn on a dime, the like deep despair, and then like turn around, but I will praise, and like the joy, and my joy is going to be, so it's just like, it's all there. And it's like, oh, like that is life, that is living.
I can't tell you how many times I've been reading the Psalms, and first of all, them being some type of supernatural like synchronicity. I mean, I've had some amazing encounters of them where like I'm listening to a song, and it's very emotional. It's a beautiful worship song, and I heard it for the first time. I'll just share it. It's You Know Me by Stephanie Gretzinger. It's a worship song from Bethel. Amazing song.
Nice.
So she pretty much turned that psalm into a song and made it her own. And I'm listening to it for the first time, and it's so beautiful, and I feel like it's washing over me as I'm listening. And I just I picked up my Bible and I ran and just dove on my bed. And I opened it up and I just started reading. Lord, I'm gonna spend a few minutes with you. And I opened it up and I would go, I randomly open it up, but it is the psalm that she took the song from. And now I'm reading it and I'm like, oh God, and the song is called You Know Me. You know everything about me, my mind, my will, my emotions, the things I hate about myself. You know me better than anyone, and you still love me. And I dive on the bed and open it. It's like, I knew that you were going to open up to this page. I knew the song you just listened, and I just started weeping in my Bible was filled with tears and stuff. But that's the beauty of those words of it meets you where you are. It is everlasting to everlasting, man. It's magical.
That was the first. So I had always felt like a longing to create music, but had never gave myself the permission. Or anyway, I come from a family of musicians, and so I always sort of felt like, I don't quite measure up, with whatever, sort of these virtuosic people in my family. But it was through going through a super hard time that I was in, and I would always, my practice is just open the Bible, trust wherever I'm going to open it to, it's going to speak to right where I am, and that sort of letting that unfold. And I kept opening up to this certain chapter in Jeremiah. I want to say, anyway, it's been a while since I thought about it. Maybe it's 26 or 27. Anyway, and I just time after time, I was like, I have to read this chapter again. Kind of was what I kept it just sort of, but I just was like, all right, I'm reading it. And it's the story of Jeremiah selling or buying property in Jerusalem when it's literally under attack, when not to invest in real estate is this place is getting razed, there's nothing gonna survive here, but God is telling him, buy this land, and the right of redemption is yours. And he and so he does. And of course, the whole story is they all get taken off into captivity in Babylon, but it's kind of this message of there's going to be life again. Something's going to grow here. New seeds are going to sprout, even though life feels entirely desolate. And, put your trust in me, put your trust in the divine. And it was from that was the first time that I gave myself this creative permission to just start writing these lyrics based on that story and how I felt it speaking to my life. And I called it At the Edge, because he's sort of standing at the edge of the city and having this conversation with God. Anyway, that song isn't on my album, but actually my dad has produced an album that is called Clear Shining After Rain, which is also a biblical allusion. It's sort of a fun gospel album. But he included that song. We produced it for his album At the Edge. But anyway, that's sort of the story behind it. That's fun to tell you. If you were to go listen to that, that was the first time where I was giving myself permission to sort of turn into song what we're both describing of you open the Bible and it's speaking right to you. And I loved what you were saying about that is the way that we sort of shake off the dust of it, shake it loose from the sort of more religious frameworks that are saying no, you can only think about it this way, or it belongs here, it doesn't belong there, or kind of, and just freeing it up. And I feel that's what this moment in our world is. And so the more of that, the more people go for themselves to just like see what the divine is speaking to them, and then even like get creatively inspired. Like that's awesome.
That's what music does. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what poetry does, and the scriptures is full of all of it and more, and allegory and myth and stuff. And then, you know, you get to those places where you're reading about, you know, Jeremiah or whoever in the Bible, right? And you find that you're reading about yourself, or
Yes.
like what he's going through, I'm going through, and it's like I'm not reading a history book anymore, but I'm reading a book about my own spiritual journey. And the way he overcame is probably going to be similar to the way that I overcome, you know, those feelings and emotions and
Yep.
things. Speaking of Jeremiah's land, do you know what happened to Jeremiah's land? I just found out. I mean, I've been reading about it for years. I just didn't make the connection.
Oh, like what happened with that land that he purchased
in the New
from that
Testament.
story, and like
Yeah.
then after the Babylonian captivity and whatever. And I don't know if I've ever followed it through.
Yeah,
Maybe I have,
so-
and I'm not remembering. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's like these little nuances that you don't really. It's easy to read past them because if you don't have no context, it's like whatever that means.
Yes.
Until you study the
whole arc of it.
Yeah, then you're like, oh God, that's this. So we're able to
Yeah.
do that with other traditions and religions or whatever. But when the Bible is so rich and so mysterious, but then you find these little things like, hold on, that wasn't random. But where Judas died, they sold the land there. So they sold the land that Judas died on, and sold it, I think, for, I feel like it was 30 shekels or whatever.
Right.
And it goes on to say that the Pharisees sold it and got the money for it, but they couldn't bring it to the temple because that amount to deposit was like, it was a curse. And like you couldn't deposit 30 shekels or whatever. And
my
so they did something else with it, and they actually renamed it. But it goes on to tell you, this is in the New Testament, where that land that they sold, land that didn't belong to them, it belonged to Jeremiah, because God made a promise to Jeremiah that you purchase this land and you'll be a watcher. You will be married to this land, and like even from beyond the grave, from your mountain, this will be your land that you watch from beyond the grave. And it's little nuances like that. When I read it, I'm at the point where I can't just read anything and just, I have to, what does that word mean? And go back and read the wording, and then it goes back. I'm like, because I didn't remember the story about Jeremiah's land.
Yes.
Like I didn't really know. It didn't stick out to me when you're reading. But in the New Testament, it's like, hold on, this was a big deal. Like this was a thing. So yeah, the Pharisees took his land, sold it, and renamed it. But I think it was one of the disciples or apostles were saying like, yeah, this was the land that Jeremiah had, and they changed the name of it. So here you got a whole nother thing of the thing which they have done and continue to do is change the names.
Yes.
Like, this land was called this, but now it's called that. And so if you don't know the name that it originally had, you just identify it as its new name that someone else gave it, from the other religions, from the other, like, you know, all of the names of our lands, America, China, you know, Russia, we don't know, like, that's the name of the land. But, you know, Puerto Rico, those names don't mean anything to us until but they mean something. Like the name Puerto Rico means port of riches, like a place that that had a lot of wealth on it, and somebody went there and took the wealth, but it's remembered in its characteristics of the name, of its character. And so with the land mass of where people are from, but also in the Bible where it says so and so was from this place. You know, I just read, I think it's like, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but like Abraham was at Helka or something like that.
Okay.
But it's like, okay, that doesn't mean nothing to me. But he went there and he spoke with those people, and he made a pact with those people that he can purchase some of that land. So kind of same kind of story. Abraham purchases this land of Helka or something like that. But it's like, what does that mean? Hespa.
Okay,
it means terror. the land of terror, and he spoke with the people of terror and made a pact with them. And it just opens up so more than like, that name doesn't mean nothing. Abraham doesn't mean, Moses doesn't mean nothing until you break it down. It's like, oh wow, Abraham means this. This random person who comes and says hello, and it tells you where he's from, who his father was, and his name. If you look up their names, your mind's blown. And I mean, they're tying back to stars. They're tying back to angels. All of these so-called people that we read about. Jeremiah being able to watch from beyond the grave. Moses going back to the mountain to be able to watch over his people from the mountains after he dies. Like, there's some stuff in here that they didn't tell us, but for those who are open, the information is coming to you and through you, and I think we're a part of that. And this is what makes this stuff so freaking new every day and potent. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it just makes me like the concept of the land and like the way, and the Bible certainly suggests this of like, the land has memory. Like the land, it was this. It doesn't matter how many hundreds of years ago, that was the land that Jeremiah purchased, and then that, lends new meaning to the events that are occurring in that place, 100 years later, or however many years later, and it's like that ongoing, especially in the Bible, because it's like all happening in this sort of certain geographic locations, so they're often spiraling back to the same locations and stuff, and so it just gets this layers and layers of meaning. And Swedenborg, Swedenborg, just, that's his main thing, is like going in and writing down what he learned from his spiritual eyes being opened, of like what those different parts, different details meant, and sort of how what he's really doing is like just giving us the foot, like a leg up to start doing that for ourselves, of like, yes, think about all the pieces, it's all in you. What does that mean? But land in particular, that's our spirit, like the outer level of our spirit. You have heaven and earth, and like, so heaven is kind of like our inner self, and the earth or the land is often, I mean, it's like this, you can think of it like the place where our spiritual lives play out. All the events are happening on this land. And I think for him, he'll make a distinction sometimes of if it's like a field, then that's more of like a truth ideas related thing. Or if it's like the land, the soil is more of like a love feeling kind of a thing. And, but that, what connects in my mind with what you're saying now is how the land, like we all share the land, and it's all the same spiritual territory inside of us. So it's like the history of what was happening with Judas in that moment, and then with Jeremiah before, and then like whatever was there before, it's tapping into like that same part of that land in us. Like that's like universal heritage. Yeah. And I mean, especially like, anyway, just thinking of the violence that is done on the land, or how like harmful it is to be like claiming something as property when it's not yours, like just this inherent sense of like the land is for us to have this relationship with. And, so obviously in the United States, we have the heritage of the Europeans coming over and taking the land. Like I live in Lenape land, and that, there's so much reconciliation that needs to happen with the land. And I feel like that same kind of humbling is what we need for connecting with each other, healing our communities. And hey, there's some connection there with the Bible and these the stuff that's happening on that land.
It's
over
crazy.
And over again.
It's there's layers to it, and once we start experiencing it, or apologizing, or whatever, like healing the land, restoring the land. I mean, there's a lot of scriptures on, on that about, I will heal your land. I'm not going to heal you. Like I'm going to heal your land. So like everyone who dwells in that land, like the land's going to bless you because it's healed. It's not going to be cursed anymore. There's a lot of that nuance. And then there's the animals that are on that land, or the elementals or whatever, that are just the spirits who died on that land. There's a lot to it. There is a lot to it. Whenever Moses was going to die, he was at the Mount Aram, I think it is, Mount Aram or something like that.
The Mount of Olives, right? Like the same one. Anyway.
Yeah. And so he goes, God says, listen, you're not going to be able to go into the promised land, but I'll let you see it. But, go down from this mountain and go back to the mountain of your people, Mount Nebo, and there I'll let you die at your mountain. And so he journeys back so that you can go back to your people.
Yeah.
Like, you need to die under this mountain, on this land, under these stars, and go back to your people so that you can watch over them from the mountain beyond the grave. Like, there's a lot in that.
Yes.
A lot in that. First of all, who is Nebo? What is Mount Nebo?
Yes.
And that unpacks a lot too. But allowing him to go there, ascend the mountain, and die to be caught back up to that constellation, if you will, so that he can watch over his people. Then we see him meeting Jesus from beyond the veil. Him and Elijah showing up and teaching Christ when he was at the top of the mountain. Transfiguration, like, he literally showed his disciples, hey, meet Moses, here he is, like, he teaches me, and he's been teaching me because I am of his order, and he is of he's a prophet, and he's over the prophets, and he has prophets under him. And the mountain that he died on is the mountain of the prophets. It's actually the Babylonian deity. The Strong's Concordance tells you that.
Wow.
Mount Nebo is for Nebo or Nebuchadnezzar, which was a Babylonian deity that Moses was from. It's like these connections that Nebo doesn't mean anything to us, but it's like going to the mountain of the prophets. This is the mountain where prophets ascend and descend to the earth and to go back home. And then you read about the death of Saul. Saul died on like a battlefield. He was begging this person who was an angel from a star system. He was begging him to help him, escort him to a different land before he dies, so that he wouldn't be like stuck on this land and under these stars. He's like begging him to move him and stuff. And it's like, we just read over that until we know, like, hold on, there's some significance from coming from a star system and a piece of you being in the land and another piece of you separating and going back to the stars.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of deep. Now you go back and read the Bible, you can't read it the same. You have to read where they're from and who their father was and what mountain they were at,
Yeah, and Swedenborg even makes this point somewhere. I couldn't pull up exactly where, but he says, like, people think that the Bible doesn't talk about, an afterlife. Like, it's sort of hard, like, especially with, I don't know, just the variety of interpretations today of, like, well, what happens when you die, and what, is there an afterlife, or do we all wait in some void for thousands of years? Like, what does all that mean? And Swedenborg says, when you look at that inner meaning, like when you're tuned in to the inner meaning of the Bible, it's all about our relation, the afterlife, like our connection to the afterlife, how we're like, it just gives you that full story of our life in this world that doesn't end, when our lives here end. And I love, so this is like, things that you said were just like sparking up so many things in my mind. So like when you were saying the Nepo and Neba is like, so King Nebuchadnezzar, and this connects with the land too, and I'll get there. But like, so his story, as it's told in Daniel, he's the king. He has all this power, and then he gets humbled. Like he gets, God warns him, like, this is not gonna go well for like you're trying to do what's of God. I'm gonna basically show you how it's done. Like what it means to actually, give your like trust in me and trust in that higher power. And so Nebuchadnezzar gets like, from riches and kings and everything to being sort of like mad in the woods. His nails grow long. Like he just becomes this wild man, and And he goes through sort of losing everything. And then at the end of that, he prophesies. He speaks a prophecy. And it's like, it's that time of like, when you go through that up and down, that's when that is the stuff of prophecy. And so I included Nebuchadnezzar as one of the prophets in my album, in one of the tracks. Wow. Quotes from his prophecy. But all of this, what you're saying about the mountain and the stars, and like, so the land and the stars, and we live between there, you know, where we sort of exist between heaven and earth. And also what you get from the Bible when it talks about land is how regenerative it is. You know, like the land becomes a desert, then it becomes a forest, then it becomes, you know, salted and ruined, and then it gets rejuvenated, you know,
or it's a sea and it's underwater for how many years, you know?
Yeah. And like that alone, I feel like is such a message of how it's like, yeah, our land is going to go through lots of different states, but we can trust the process. Like there is this healing that we can do, like you were talking about, that can rejuvenate the land. And I mean, talk about important idea for our times, but just like healing the world. I just think that's what's happening to us spiritually, and there's some way that can play out in this material magical world that we live in.
Yeah. Have you been watching the Power of the Rings or whatever, the new Lord of the Rings series that came out?
I have not yet. Okay. I've seen it. It's like caught my eye, and I'm like, oh, I gotta.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But there was I don't want to give much away. I just wanted to know, but it's pretty good, right? You know, tying into fantasy and then tying into Tolkien, which the more you start breaking these words down, it's for me, it's looking a lot like in like a physical sense anyway. Let's look at that. And reading the Old Testament. Like it looks like Lord of the Rings, like these different divine beings of literally orcs, pigmen, and wolfmen, and humans, and angels, and they're all fighting wars, and they're making pacts, and it's like, you don't get pigmen if it tells you their name, but because his name is whatever their name means, you don't get that, but when you look it up, it's like, oh, it means a fat pig. Like there was a king, you know, the king Eglon, I think it was his name. Like his name literally means fat cow or fat walrus.
Right.
Like, he's just a fat guy, and everybody called him that. It's like when he was killed, the guy stabbed him and stuck his whole arm in him. When he stabbed him, it's like you're getting some of this lore that looks a lot like Lord of the Rings to me from a physical standpoint. But like you said, there's a spiritual side of it too. Like, where is the spiritual side? So I find it beautiful to read it all as it was literal, right? And that's where most of Christianity does, these literal stories. But breaking down the names for me in the words brings in a huge fantasy side. Magic and dragons and fire beings coming out of the fire to bring you a message, and then going back and traveling. Crazy stuff. But then the book of Hebrews, right? We get there. And it talks about that, like, the things that were before were an allegory, and the temple of, you know, Solomon or the tabernacle, all of these were like a mirror image of the celestial temple in heaven, and also the celestial temple or the physical temple in your anatomy in man. So now all these names that were servants in the temple, or doorkeepers, or portal openers, or warriors, or gold collectors, like that's what these names mean. So now they're in the spirit world. Like they already are, because like even if you don't want to get that deep, like they don't exist anymore. Like those people are dead if they were like literal people, right? But where are they in the spirit world? What are they doing? They're continuing to do whatever you read in their story, and they exist to do that. That's in their DNA and that nature. So Hebrews is like, okay, all of that was a spiritual allegory of a physical example of what's happening spiritually above you. So these doorkeepers and the priest had servants that worked for them, and And it says, now you're a priest. Do we have servants? Do you have servants? You don't know. And like, but they did. So are you really a spiritual priest? Well, maybe you have beings that are here to help you carry out God's will on the earth. But we forgot their names, and their names have been hidden. This is what, just like for me, it keeps me up at night, but it's allowing me to start experiencing these things with the prophecies of the people and the saints of old and all of these guys coming back. And it was cool to talk to Curtis, because like I'm going through this like in a new level of awakening for me. It just like got intense. And then Curtis is like, oh yeah, Swedenborg, he was teaching on all that. Yeah, he believed.
Yeah.
What the heck? So like even more of the bones of the prophets, like the information is like, hey, we need new flesh.
Yes.
Like I need somebody who's apt to carry this message.
Yes.
And if there is no one, then the message is hidden. But when an individual opens themselves up to love, to understanding, to contemplation, to these things, then that energy is able to be imparted to you, to come to you with information because you care. Like if you don't care, there's no reason for you to even know any of this stuff. But these are now the things that keep me, and not just me, it's many people up. And now we're bringing these pieces to the table of like, you were a madman. And it is silly and it's strange and scary to speak on these things until you do. And people are like, yeah, same thing's happening to me. I believe the same thing. Because this stuff is scary to talk about. Like, I know you got to be like, if you're able to tie in like all of these traditions into the Bible, like that's a no-no. And it gets very, very, very crazy. I'm tying in Babylonian gods into saying Moses was working with them and a part of their order. Like, because we're told Nebuchadnezzar's like only bad. There was no good in Babylon or Sumeria or any of this stuff. So for you in your studies and some of these concepts that you can't find anyone, I'm sure the more you study, you'll see nuances at least. It may not be a whole bunch, but like Swedenborg kind of like sprinkling some of this stuff. But it was buried and it was taken from us and it's coming back. How do you like reconcile some of these, oh my God, is this what the Bible is saying? Because you can't interpret it just with the Bible. There's no way. But when you know Greek philosophy, when you know Hinduism, you're like, oh God, this is talking about partnering with a disembodied spirit and letting them use your body and speak to people through you. Oh my God. Let me go tell my church friends and see what happens. How do you reconcile all this crazy information, without going crazy?
Well, see, I think that's partly what is sort of interesting to have Swedenborg's published, like his theological works, because it's like, here's this guy who for almost 30 years did nothing but like live this out and write it all down and like study it like a scientist. So, because it's so easy, I feel like, for people to kind of be dismissive of like, oh yeah, whatever, like you're coming in making up nonsense. Like, but even I think collectively, the more people are like, no, me too, you know, that starts to lend more like, I don't know, like cohesion. You sort of build up this network of that. But it seems to make a difference that it's like, and I keep pointing back here because those are his books. It's like, here are these books. And like, here's this guy who wrote all this time. Like, you can't kind of ignore 27 years of talking about it like it's like not even like, I mean, Swedenborg and Curtis might have mentioned this, like Swedenborg himself was like, wrote down how kind of it so freaked him out when he figured out that spirits know everything, know more about him than he knows about himself, and know all of his thoughts, and then all this crazy stuff about how your spirit interacts with the spirits that are around you and how they kind of can merge with your memory. Like it just, first it was like he thought what happened in his head was privacy, was his private thoughts, and then he realized, kind of like, oh crap, like these spirits know everything. But then like that's early in his spiritual awakening. So then like, 10, 15 years down the road, he's like, it's just like the rain that falls. Like you just know, oh yeah, this is just a part of existence, is this whole like spiritual connection network system that our lives are always existing in. So that's definitely like, for me, I'm unfazed by the weirdness because I've been reading it and imagining it for so long. And then, but even in my own life, see, I understand, you know, one key idea that Swedenborg describes is how we have levels to our minds, like distinct levels. And when you understand how distinct they are from one another, you start to realize, oh, that's why certain parts of myself can believe one thing while another part of myself believes something completely different, and they kind of are at odds with each other sometimes, you know, like, so I in my own life can get into modes of thinking or like get sort of lost, like a certain part sort of takes on the whole me, and really kind of questions any of the, you know, magic in life, or like falls, like says, oh yeah, they're all right, what they said, yeah, we shouldn't, like, this is all, I don't know, you sort of have this like limited thinking or something. But then when I connect in with higher parts of myself, it just, you know, the whole world opens up. And especially like through, you know, meditation is one main way of sort of keeping that channel open, you know, connecting with those higher parts of yourself. And so with Swedenborg, when you start to take, right, reading the Bible, what Swedenborg described, and then witnessing your own self, it just feels like, oh, like there is no end to the amazing, wild, like interconnections that you're talking about. And like, but especially that this is a universal language. Like this is all natural, innate to our spirits. And so even though it might seem crazy at first, it's like Swedenborg, where like then once you're used to it, you're like, oh yeah, I've got that spirit with me that has the lion's face and all the wings and the, you know, whatever, like just that, it's sort of amazing and totally normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like even if you're not like visually seeing wild things or something like that in terms of like your spiritual life, or I still think it's the meaning, it's the symbology that is so powerful, that is always like with what you were describing. I was thinking about how you're mentioning the temple and the city, and Swedenborg describes this certain level of our mind being like the middle level is this city, and it really is the city, you know, the holy city. And the outer level of our mind can come to the gate of it, you know, and receive things from the city. But like, especially if the like evil spirits or like evil, like harmful, whatever thoughts or feelings, they can try to get into the city, but they can never actually get in. It's totally just an appearance that it might look like they've taken over the city, but and so then when you realize that all the stuff that happens to cities in the Bible is describing your own interconnection with love and wisdom from the divine flowing in and through your city like that river of the water of life. And then these sort of outer thought patterns that you can get stuck in that bring you down, confuse you, make you feel hopeless, make you feel despairing, like that whole dynamic is playing out inside of us. So anyway, I don't know if that's like totally an answer to your question, but I mean, like
it's like really the metaverse, right? Like literally it's the metaverse. So it's not just like one thing. And there's been so many people over the years who would say, well, it's only this, and what like sparked my epiphany of like going a lot deeper was showing me it's not just that or that, because I'm wrestling in between, wow, it's the anatomy, like the kingdom is inside of you. Literally your ribs are the 24 elders that are bowing down to the throne of God. The throne of God is your heart. Okay, this is all about the anatomy of man. And it's like, no, it's above you, and it's spiritual, and it's like all of them at the same time. And then when you go back and read the scriptures and those different patriarchs, I believe that they represent a different dimension, if you will. Like Abraham kind of made his rounds with the different guardians or gods of the realm, the Lord of the realms, right? And it's a very deep study, but it's the fact that you exist on all of them.
Yes.
And even the shadow realm, right? This realm of where like disembodied, like the, the dogs who are on the outside, the disembodied evil spirits, where are they? And we know they're kind of stuck in between in the ether somewhere. Well, the parts of you that until it gets destroyed, like it's stuck here, and we'll call it an evil spirit or some type of ghost, at least the evil one, but know that the beautiful side or the beautiful aspect, what is ever of that is eternal, and that spark in that individual, it ascends to the higher levels, and it is eternal. So it's not just like you only exist in one realm. There's a you hear this term in the Bible a lot, like a mingling, like the flesh was mingled, and there was a mingle between, you just mentioned a lion and like a human or whatever, and like there was like this mingling that happened, and then throughout the entirety of the Bible, and it was through some kind of fornication, right? It's just a mixture, and then their children comes out, a human and a lion get together, whether it's sexually or in a lab, because we're dealing with some wild stuff in the physical lore, if you will. But spiritually, now you have an individual or a person emotionally who is loving and who does what humans do, but they also are a lion and they scream, or they're connected with the full moon. You know what I'm saying? These different types of individuals that are in one body. But usually there's, for the human soul anyway, I feel like there's this separation, which is the judgment of God that allows those bad parts of you to separate when you die and when you're judged. And we're doing that every day. You're getting more light within you. So you're already becoming that judge as you judge yourself. So no man or no God can judge you, because you stand before the gods with clean hands and a pure heart, like King David. Lord, create in me a clean heart. So when it's time for you to come before judgment, you've got almost all light within you. Now this is eternal. You've expanded the territory that I gave you. You were faithful with your time on earth, and now you have another role in the heavens. Now you're allowed to come to these other levels that are governed. It's not just free reign. The New Jerusalem, 12 dimensions, 12 levels. Now you have access to higher dimensions that you didn't have until you came here. You fell. You left this is not your first estate. You came here, left your first estate, and took on flesh. And you were mingled, body, soul, and spirit, right? You're mingled with the three, but that's what you needed to experience life as a human. Mentioning Nebuchadnezzar and some of the other fallen kings, we got the king of Tyre. Like, it says that because of your pride, you're gonna fall. And you were an anointed cherub, and you had all of these beautiful rupees and these which hold memory. This is what you are spiritually. But now you're going to fall, and you're going to die the deaths, plural, of a man, until you learn the error of your way, and you can come back home, prodigal son, when you learn. So now you're an angel who left his first estate, now is walking around as a confused 12-year-old. A confused kid with parents and stuff, and it's like, something in me feels eternal, something in me feels like ancient. Shut up, you're crazy. Like, but then beings are coming to you like this. This is what we're talking about, of every individual who is here. We're from the stars. We are star seeds, and we're experiencing life on earth to be sorted and to receive a eternal reward, which is an upgrade through Christ. And all of these things begin to make sense. All the religions begin to make sense, and the Bible starts to make sense. And it's locked, and it's hidden from people who aren't allowed. Because whatever level you get access to when you die, whatever, like I'm going to be in this 7th level of Jerusalem, and I get access to all the other ones. You have access now.
Yes.
So that's why when you get more love and more light within you, now the beings who are associated with that level, they start showing up and teaching you. Why they wasn't here when I was 12, or you needed 2nd grade curriculum. You would not understand it. There's still things we don't understand. You still have too much pride and too much hurt and too much jealousy in you. But as you deal with that through meditation, through mindfulness, through prayer, and God showing you, you're able to ascend back into the mountain of your God. A mountain on the earth represents a place where heaven and earth touch. It's a portal.
Yes.
It's a place
Yes.
that's physically on the earth, but it also touches the sky. So this is a place where these angels and these beings were coming back and forth through. So,
And those are those levels of love, like a mountain to Swedenborg, or he describes it meaning divine love. And in its inverse, it can mean the kind of self-pride, like aggrandizement.
Because it goes down too. Like it goes into the earth, to the fire and disembodied
so he'll
demons
remove
too.
mountains. The one who can move mountains is that one who can break down that sort of infatuation that we can get caught in our minds. And that was something you were describing of, like, the whole concept of evil spirits is the way the divine and angels, Swedenborg says, even see anybody who you might call as evil is like, no, there is some goodness in them, and it's been completely,
hidden, shrouded.
Buried over and locked up, and it just so that's why, like, the angels just want to help free us from that, that burden. And that's the way we can even work with ourselves when we see things in ourselves that are, like, I don't like that, or like, oh, I don't like how I acted toward that person, or like, or just those places of pain. It's like there's goodness in there, and you can work with the divine to free yourself and uncover that and integrate that with that whole, all those levels. Oh my goodness. So first of all, I have to just say, like, Isaiah, in the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. It's like, so that the king's dying is this essential transition to being able to see. I mean, that is the one mountain crumbling, and then, the mountain of the Lord
Somebody
appearing.
has to replace it. Like, we can't,
nobody,
we have to have a watcher on the wall. And so who's up next? Who's next?
Yes.
He fell. We don't have nobody worthy. There is none. Who's worthy to open the seal? No one. Well, no, we have one now. Christ has come down and he became a human. He's worthy. He's worthy to sit on all the thrones, all the dominions, every single one. Give him the keys. He can open them up. He is the portal. He is the way. And like he showed, he's the firstborn among many brethren. Like, the stuff starts making sense. It's just weird religion and, like, what theology, but then when it becomes real, I don't know if it can even be explained. Like, I'm just still experimenting. Like, we're trying to explain it, and people are like, I know we're building interest and intrigue, right? And that's how you experience it. To know that it's possible, to know that you're not alone with these weird thoughts you've had. But once you start experiencing it, now you have authority to speak to it, because it's not, I'm not even talking about a theory anymore. This is my reality. This is my truth. When you start experiencing Bible prophecy, like in your life, and you're like, well, see, it's not on the news, or everyone's not experiencing it. That's the key. The scriptures tell you it's not for everyone. But once you reach a part in your life of the life of Christ, because you're being conformed into his image, into love, and you start experiencing this stuff, and we start looking around for like people to be like, yeah, that's what it is. And sometimes there's nobody, and it's just you and God and what he told you and what you're experiencing. But that's part of what you're going to do. Are you going to hold on? You're going to stay faithful? Or are you going to be scared to talk about it because people are going to mock you and make fun of you or whatever? And I'm experiencing it, and it was scary, and it is scary. But the more I read the Bible, now I got terminology for it. And the more I feel, Swedenborg's work, but not just him, like so many people that I didn't know existed. Like, I don't know their names, but I'll say this, they're coming to me. Like, they're a part of the order that I'm a part of, that I'm being introduced to them through information, through downloads, through dreams, through hearing scriptures whispered to me, and all of this weird stuff. But the more research I do, and the same thing happened for me with Swedenborg, it's like, oh yeah, there was a guy who lived in the 1600s who wrote several books on this, and he was experiencing it. Why isn't the pastors talking about this? Why aren't the clergy, like, we should know? Why is their work buried? Oh yes, some guy who lived here, he was they called him a heretic, but he believed the same things that he experienced this. But now that you are in alignment with the energy, now you're privy to it, to start experiencing it up and down. Like, if you, like, the same rules apply if you begin to go into, like, you take several steps backward and get into drugs and addiction and chaos and confusion. There's beings that want to say hello to you on that level too. So it goes up, the ascension goes up, but it also goes down, and we
Not
are
like so great a cloud of witnesses, you know, they're there. It's real.
We think that cloud means clouds.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, that word, because I sprinkle some of this, like, on social media and stuff or whatever.
Yes.
And I did one video and I said, have you ever thought about this? I was like, what? I led it with a what if, just because I don't want to be like, this is the only one. And what if I'm wrong? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how we got to be. I said, well, what if your body is a temple and God lives in you, and you are the second coming of Christ? You're waiting for him to come in the clouds and take dominion on the earth. But what if you, stepping aside and allowing him to live in you and speak through you and renew you, what if you are him? And now as more people do it, he's got more ground to cover, and he's here in full effect as we step aside. And just to see first of all, the overwhelming response from people who were like, yeah, this is it, Christ consciousness, these kind of things. But the religious folks who are like, no, that's not it, that's not it. First of all, my what if wasn't even a question. This is what I'm experiencing, and obviously many more people.
So here's an example. Like, I've been connecting in with that too, with the whole second coming of Christ, and really, who is Jesus? You know, like, who are we talking about here? Where it's like, just some background of this, like Swedenborg, and I don't know if you've touched into this yet with Curtis or just with your own explorations, but Swedenborg describes how Jesus studied the Old Testament and saw in it a mirror of his spiritual process, you know, the process he went through. And so particularly those patriarchs, you know, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then Joseph, you have that connects, Swedenborg says, that is a mirror. It's exactly what you're saying, of the levels of our spirit. So Abraham is the highest love, that connection to love, direct, you know, just you're in it. And then Isaac is what Swedenborg calls the rational level, but like the next level down, it sort of means something different than what we think of as rational, but it's like just our ability to reflect, our ability to start cogitating and understanding what divine love is communicating to us. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob is the outer self, the outer level of our spirit that deals with all the knowledge, you know, just like knows what's going on, is like studying things, building up all the, you know, the stores of information. And then you have Joseph, and Joseph is Christ, is this picture of Christ, but particularly this essential connector that knows how to align all the levels with each other and getting them all to communicate with each other, that is you're like a regenerated human being, like you are like being an angel, or in like the Jesus story, becoming fully divine, you know, the full glorification. But what is Jesus other than the Joseph, you know, the Joseph that shows up in us and starts connecting all those levels, is showing us how to look, here's how you deal with what's on the Jacob level. Here's how you wake up and refresh what's on the Isaac level. Here's how you connect to what your purpose is, you know, like divine love as it's communicating just to you and has this pathway through you into the world. And that's that whole alignment. And so recently I was thinking about the story of Jesus turning the tables of the money changers in the temple, right? And I'm just like, oh, like I've been playing around with even just like when I read Jesus, reading like your true self, you know, like your higher self, your inner self, the self of you that can be full, that is the receiver of divine love and wisdom inside, and then knows how to make sense of all the other stuff, you know, like, I mean, just fully aligned. And so that like, just how we have to sometimes, we have to start putting the priority on what Jesus is telling us, you know, like what the divine is telling us, even if it goes so completely countercultural to like what society would be telling us to do, you know, like here's how you fit in, here's how you know, do X, Y, and Z. Like that whole making that is actually the energy that Jesus, that your true self wants to sort
it's
of like.
Why you're here.
Yeah. Come
Everything
in
else
and, like,
is an illusion.
yeah.
Like that. Like I don't want to get crazy and schizophrenic with it, but because you have to be anchored. Like the moment you tap into this stuff and you're not anchored in Christ and love, it gets very overwhelming, and it can be a hard time for many individuals. But it's the true reality that goes beyond whatever we've convinced ourselves to try to buy time or think that we are eternal like this. Like we do things to like not think about death or you know, what's really happening or who's the government, whatever it is. But it's like, hold on, like everything is an illusion. Your job, like our music, like us being able to introduce ourselves as who we are. Like I like myself, I'm having fun in this experience, but I know it's temporary. I know there's something in me that is divine though. Like that it's probably not going to introduce itself to you as TruthSeekah, right? It's eternal, and it exists in many different realms, and it probably doesn't have ego to you know, do certain things, but it's eternal. And it's like we try to convince ourselves that this existence lasts forever, but like you're here to wake up, like to become lucid in the dream, because there is a point, there's a method to the madness, that there's something we're supposed to do here, and it's to love, and it's to learn to love, and it's to forgive, and it's to do everything that Jesus did, you know. Like
we do have this body, a body for a reason, and that's like, you know, the rebuilding of the temple is the like, I'm not just getting rid of what's going on the outer level of the world for the sake of what's inside, but rather to rebuild it and then flow through it. You know, that full alignment is like where, and like for us to do that while we're alive here. And it was just making me think of your comments earlier about the 24, you know, elders and the ribs and stuff. Is like, that's something else you'll have fun exploring in Swedenborg sometime, because his whole spiritual experience was mapped on his body. It was like our bodies, and I have this somewhat informed from like yoga philosophy too, but we have a spiritual body. But Swedenborg describes like our spiritual body, and it is everywhere in our physical body. And the key word Swedenborg uses is correspondences, or a correspondence between our physical body and our spiritual body. And that's how it ends up being a conduit for our consciousness to be able to have this growing relationship with those inner levels, and with like what the divine is like, you know, turning our lives over to that guidance. And like it is, we do need to be embodied, you know, like it is through our body. There's this perfect mirroring there that is just, you know, gosh, talk about like a so much to unpack there, but that's something you can explore sometime. There's so much we
man, like how many bodies? We talked about land too. What is a land mass called?
The land and the body.
A body of water, a body of land. But on that body lives a bunch of different organisms, a bunch of different people who have a body. And they have multiple bodies within them.
Yes.
Like Jesus was considered to be he had the fullness of the Godhead within him. Like he had all bodily, all of the gods. So when Christ is living in you, it's not just dear Jesus. Dear Jesus is it's everything. It's every
Yes.
order as you need it. When you go to them, don't think about what you're gonna say. I'm gonna speak through you, and I'm gonna tell you what to say. Like, the more you read that, and the more you understand that, you start reading the exploits of the disciples and Paul,
Yeah.
and it's like Paul is about to speak, but then like Timothy or Silas cuts him off and speaks for him, and it's like, and then I'm looking up with what Timothy, what Paul, what Silas, what Jason, all of these disciples, these are the names of gods, you guys. This is not regular people. Like Paul was, there was multiple parts of him, and we read it, and they've told us, yeah, that was a friend that went out with him. It was a friend, okay, but you think it was another human that he was like discipling. He's like,
Yes.
this, when you see it, you can't unsee it, and the Bible turns into a brand new book.
Yes.
It's a brand new book. And scriptures I've read a million times, not a million, but a lot. They mean something totally different now. Like, yeah, and I'm having fun exploring. I'm having fun trying to wrap my head around it and experimenting, but it ties in to all the other stuff you're talking about: meditation, breath work, getting clear on who are you mixed with. Like, you got some good gods in you, and you got other bad gods, the gods of the flesh, the gods of the unclean breath, like those spirits, if you will. To inhale is to inspire, to speak under the inspiration of the Holy Ghost. What is it to be under the inspiration of an unclean spirit, or the inspiration of someone who came before you? It is to literally allow them to live, even momentarily or throughout your existence, to live with you, to counsel you. Like, we just say Jesus or the Holy Spirit or whatever, but there's a plurality, first of all, to God, and also the gods under them, because there's bodies. Those of you who are in the body of Christ, we already know that there's 7 churches in Christ too. So they're dealing with 7 churches, and a church is a collection of, in our minds, is a collection of people, like a whole bunch of Christians or whatever, in this area, in this region, on this land. You've got land masses of bodies that are levels of where individuals or spirits or gods or angels dwell, that are all multi-celled creatures inside of a body, and they all have a purpose, and they carry information. And then you have the celestial bodies in the sky, the houses of the zodiac. Those are a body, as a constellation of the zodiac, but then you got all the individual stars within them. And then within them, there's lesser stars that are smaller or further away, but they're still in that body. These are these levels that, as above, so below, as within, so without. And the Bible, if there's any truth to it, the Bible has to speak to it, right? For it to be as beautiful and as potent that it is. And it does. But
that is what Swedenborg writes about, like the nature of divine revelation, and that he just said the natural world is the original divine revelation. So we are living in it every day, but we lost, or just like over time, human society is losing touch with that intuitive sense of connection to the divine revelation that's like in the tree that's outside their window, whatever. And then they wouldn't have windows, but then you have, but then you do have the Bible, that it is this vehicle of divine revelation for us. And then our bodies are divine revelation for us as well. So I can only imagine this is like mind blowing for people, but I feel like the core message is like that you're not alone, there's a community, and like just you and I, we only just met, and yet here we are getting to connect on all these things as if it's like, oh yeah, I know, I've known you, and that's pretty amazing.
Just what it represents is like the beauty that I was lied to, or even without I say without saying, it was said, but you had to have everything figured out to be a minister, to be a teacher, or whatever the case is. And like, I've got some comments yesterday, and I continue to get these comments. You're deceived, but you're leading so many people, and you're deceived. And I was like, isn't that awesome? That you don't have to have all the perfect doctrine all the way figured out for God to use you, and for you to be an instrument of love. That's why it's not this is the only way. Because the moment that you say it's the only way, you step into pride and you find out that no, there's 17 ways, and now you're juggling them all. But it's to be open. And I find it so beautiful that what I represent, you guys represent, but so many people is like what Christ represents is diversity. Is to like bring your piece of the puzzle, and if it fits, we'll find a way to, and maybe it does fit, but like way over here, it's like the puzzle's bigger than you thought, and it fits somewhere. So bring your piece to the table. The Bible says, come together, let us reason. And you don't have to have it all figured out. You can have different nuances. You can't, like, that's what makes Christ diverse, which is a body of different members. I'm at war with my members. I'm at war. Like, we're trying to figure this out. My mind is telling me this, my flesh is telling me that, my pastor's telling, like, but it is in that war that we're individuals of peace. And I know I'm at war with everything, but I'm at peace with myself. So now I'm at peace with everything and everyone around me. And if we honor the light, if we honor the love, in any religion, in any person or whatever, that's eternal, and that is Christ. Now you're able to see him in places that you weren't privy to, because you walked in judgment, because you walked in racism, because you walked in hurt and unforgiveness. But the moment you do what he said to do, he's trying to teach you how to unlock these beautiful mysteries and pass these tests. Is don't be attached. Don't take it personal. Like, it's not, you're a lot. This is ancient, man. This is something that is more beautiful. So it's helping a lot of people. Being weird and talking about all this stuff, like, for those who aren't privy.
What you're doing is you're helping people. It's like there's such a fear of that. Oh no, I'm being deceived, or you're being deceived.
Who isn't?
Like there's no fear of deception when you have that guiding love. Like that love is trustworthy. And so, I'm going to keep growing and experiencing and learning new things, and trusting that, like, okay, if there's some kind of deception, or if I'm getting off track, or if there's something, that love is that is the organizing principle of all things. So there's no fear of that
perfect
deception.
Love casts out all fear.
And
if you do it with you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and it's messed up. But you can do the wrong thing and be in error or deception. There is no error or deception. Let's just say that all possibilities exist. But you can be doing something weird and being off, but your heart is pure and your motives are pure. There's no judgment against you. The only judgment is to bring forth a loving correction and to honor, because what you're doing, as long as it's a love, you exist as a conduit for the spirits of love, which is Christ, and everything of his order is of love. There's so much freedom in that. We've got so much guilt, shame, and condemnation, and with this stuff. And I deal with a lot of the church, crowd and stuff, and rightfully so, like the way that I, use wording and stuff like that. But I love all the wording. I love all of it. But the Bible is my my main book or whatever. But there's younger versions of me, and maybe I don't know your full background, but like the people who are stuck in religion, and there's a ceiling. You can't, this is as good as it gets, or this is as whatever, until you see what's possible. And so I just want to let people know that there is more. If this is for you, if this is not, like, find, you got to know who you are, and not be scared, and find your tribe. But for those who are outcast and weird and think outside the box, there's a tribe for you, and it's bigger than you thought. It's way big. It's becoming the majority. It's becoming the majority. What we're doing.
I will not leave you orphaned. Yeah.
So good. So I don't know how much time you got. I could keep going. So just let me know when you got it. When you got to jump off.
Well, that's great. I'm just loving the conversation. I know you're the one that has to go through and edit all this or put it together for a video. So I'm willing to follow your lead. But this is just super fun. So I'm good. So
talk a little bit about like how you got into like the spiritual stuff, like spirituality and religion. And I know you had like a near-death experience, and your mother came to you, and you had an encounter where that happened. Can you talk a little bit about that, the origin story?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, sort of like the religions that we all sort of grow out of, like whatever that everybody's own personal experience. But with Swedenborg, when he published his books, after he died, people started organizing, reading his books and saying, this has to be a church. And they even organized a church. And then, sort of within half a beat, they were splitting and arguing over how to, should people get rebaptized? Should like just starting to fight and snarl over all the doctrine. And that went on for, 150 some years, whatever. I mean, to this day, there's still Swedenborgian churches, and they've been, like any living thing, it's changing and rejuvenating itself and everything. So it's like, so that's just to say there's Swedenborgian churches, and I was raised in one of them. And so my father is a minister in this certain Swedenborgian church, and my grandfather was. Anyway, I've got like family history in this.
From where? From the States?
Yeah. The churches were mainly in England, and I have English heritage because I was connected to the churches over there. But then there was a particular church that organized itself and split off from the national Swedenborgian church in America back in the late 1800s and the 1890s. And that church really, anyway, I'm like super deep into a study of this history, but anyway, it really thought it really understood things the right way and split off and became this pretty like ultra conservative fundamental interpretation of Swedenborg's writings. And it's doing its battles, like they're like it's a community, and there are people who think differently, and so it's having its own struggle. And so I really so I was sort of raised within that, and my father and grandfather were ministers in the church, somewhat free thinkers, wanting to think, sort of pushing the envelope a bit in the church, and so for myself coming of age, it's like this church still doesn't ordain women. It like holds really tightly to certain really dogmatic ideas that more and more people have been, arguing that are like, you're holding Swedenborg's writings in this very tight grip, like there's maybe a bigger way to think about it. So I did advocacy for that kind of thing for a while before I just made my peace and left the church, created distance for myself there. But anyway, that's a bit of the background. And so when I was 10 years old, my mom died. She had an aggressive form of brain cancer. So it was like 6 months from her diagnosis to when she died. And I'm the middle of three girls. So I have an older sister and a younger sister. And our mom died November 13th, 1994. And so, but this occurred, I was raised with these ideas of the spiritual world, Swedenborg's teachings about spirits and angels, how there's life after death. There's like all these, like that's what I've personally struggled with in my own journey, is kind of reconciling what I read in Swedenborg's works with the way that they were presented to me from this very, like what I now understand to be a really conservative presentation. And anyway, but I had those ideas as this framework, this sort of like wow, the spiritual world is this amazing, alive, living thing that's connected to me right now. And I don't know if that played a part in it, but just a few months after my mom died, I had a number of dreams of her that were really more like visitations. And I sort of knew from what I had learned of Swedenborg to even like recognize it as that like this was, so I basically had like lucid, out of body, you could say, dreams, because I would go to sleep and then my spirit would wake up and get out of my body and go walking around my house and like would find my mom. She would come to visit me in different parts of the house. And I sort of saw in the dreams this progression that her spirit went through from looking very much the way she did before she had brain cancer, but when she was just alive in this world, to then sort of taking on this more like light, sparkling quality. Like her hair seemed to glow. Like when she would speak, it sort of came out as like ringing bells. Like, and anyway, and then there was a final time where I had this dream or I went to sleep. I was actually just like napping in the middle of the day, and I woke up I woke up, my spirit woke up and I was somewhere else. It wasn't my mom coming to me. I had woken up into what I could only identify as what Swedenborg describes as like the world of spirits, where it was just this, I was just in a forest, but I knew I was somewhere else in some other realm. And my mom appeared to me there, and I was so happy to see her. And after we embraced, she literally started like lifting up into the air and like drifting off. And I was like, no, don't leave. Like, I don't want you to leave. And she was like, don't worry, you'll know where to go. I'll see you soon, basically. And that's when I sort of stood up in this forest, and there are these pathways going through the forest. And I sort of felt like I didn't know which one to take, but then I sort of felt my mom's voice kind of behind me, letting me know, like, go to the right, go down this pathway. So I walked down through this pathway in the woods, and it was a very deep, thick forest, and like the roots were intertwined, creating this pathway, like dark green mossiness. And I'll never forget the pathway sort of split a couple more times, and at each point I would have this like fear come up in me, but then I would hear this voice of my mom's that just let me know, or almost like wordlessly, but let me know, go to the right, and I would go there. It's interesting to reflect on that now, because I feel like there are definitely, my reaction when I'm faced with the decision is like fear, but then this like, no, you can trust your intuition, like, where is your intuition leading you? So then I was walking down this path. The path was getting eaten by this light. Like the light, there was just like, I was walking and I knew I couldn't not walk toward this light, but I could see the depth, closing in, where I was like, I'm going to keep walking and I'm going to go into this light, and I don't know what's going to be on the other side. It's just so bright. And so I walked into it, and it enveloped my whole vision, so I couldn't see anything. It was just like bright light. And then after a time, I sort of like, like my eyes adjusted, and I started being able to pick out shapes of things, and it was these beings who were coming toward me. And as the beings got closer, and as my eyes adjusted, each being turned into a couple, like two people together. And then once we were all there, my mom appeared to me again. She was there with me. So I really, like, in reflecting on it, I feel like this was me going through these levels, going to some level, and I was sort of being spiritually prepared to go where she was, into this light space. And when everybody was there, we just started dancing. And I mean, I was a 10-year-old girl, what better to do than dance with your mom. And what was really interesting, the light kind of created this giant throne to my right, and I knew that God was sitting in the throne, but I all I could see, it was like the most like joyful, cheerful being, and they were barefoot and just like kicking their feet in laughter and joy. And then God reached down into his lap and threw these petals, these rose petals, into the air that were then like coming down around all of us dancing. And after we danced for a time, it started to rain. But the rain was like just this like crystal water. And when it landed on you, it got absorbed into your skin. And same with like on the light, it just like got absorbed into the atmosphere. And which interestingly, Swedenborg has described that in some of his spiritual experiences. A lot of these things sort of like I read later sort of lined up in interesting ways. And that rain falling, like the energy kind of calmed down, and we sort of got the sense of like, this is closing out, we're ending now. And people started leaving and sort of merging with the light as they left. And my mom told me, this is the last time you're gonna see me for a long time. I'm not gonna, she sort of speaking of prophecy, she kind of gave me this prophecy of like, things are gonna get really dark, but don't worry, like I'm with you and you'll be okay. But basically letting me know like, this isn't gonna happen again. And I, when I reflect on it now, it's like, I feel like she was, speaking of that, like ascending, like things, her spirit was changing. And so when she like it was getting too distant, so that my spirit was not going to be in a place to be able to be communicating with her directly like that anymore, was the sense I got at the time. And so she left, and then God reached down and picked me up and lifted me up to that throne and laid me in his lap, and then like put this blanket of light over me. And I was like tiny, like I could like fit in the hands, and I fell asleep in that space, and then woke up in my body in the material world. And so that was like, yeah, just a super formative, like amazing spiritual experience to have at only 10 years old. So like, even though I did go through, like speaking of my like story in terms of how I connected with these ideas, I went through teenagerhood. I wanted to kind of get away from it all. That's when I got really interested in, wanting to study other religions, just like see what else is out there. And, but it was later in my 20s that I got, sort of went back, started reading Swedenborg's experiences for myself, and just found, again, such an alignment with an affirmation of what I felt like was the spiritual experiences that were going on in me. And that's when I just like dove in, and it was, I don't know, however many years later that Curtis was starting off the Left Eye and connected with me, and he had me start doing, first I was like a moderator, but then we were writing the shows together and creating the Swedenborg Life Show. And that, so it's definitely been interesting to have that memory of that spiritual experience. And for me, dreams, like, this is the kind of thing, like people ask, like you wonder, do you believe in this or do you believe in that? But for me, it's just like my living experience is such an apparent revelation, like I had this experience with my mom. My dreams are vehicles of revelation for me. Like they help me in my spiritual life. They like, my grandfather has since passed away, and I've seen him multiple times in my dreams, like at these critical moments that help me on my path. Like just this whole sense that the people we love who move on into the spiritual world and the afterlife remain really interested in supporting us, is what I have the sense of. And it's like, and whether it's them, people you knew, or just different spiritual beings that are our supports, but like they want to help us. And I feel like when we're asleep and we're dreaming, that's when, I guess it's like our material senses are dulled enough that we can be sensitive to what heaven and angels would be flowing in. And so it's always been just an active part of my life. But then as I've, continued to grow myself, it is just, there's always more, like it just feels like it was learned knowledge for a long time with some lived experience, but now it's like it's becoming alive in me. All of what we've talked about, is like alive in a way that it's never been before, where it's not like, oh, do you believe these ideas in a book? It's like, no, I am living these ideas in my soul, in my spirit. And that's a continual revelation. And yeah, so like I don't know where it's all leading.
Taking
leading me or leading
taking
us,
it day by day. But
yes,
sharing that story and similar stories like like how much hope that it brings in an individual, and I mean not just hope, but just it's a knowing, because even like hope is like maybe, but like to know that I don't hope that Jesus is real. I don't hope that spirits exist because whatever, or my mother is in a good place or whatever. No, I know, and I'm privy to things that I wasn't privy to, and I'm having experiences that prove, first of all, those biblical texts for sure, but my experiences they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Bible and the experiences, the Bible, my life, and eternity, and these prophecies, of what we're experiencing, because there's a prophecy about resurrection, and resurrection will happen, and we have one thing in our head of what that looks like when Christ comes back and everyone's resurrected or whatever.
yes,
Like I was in this place of like, I believe that it already happened,
yes,
I ended up at, in a belief system, I didn't even know it was a thing, but of something called a preterist, thinking that all those Bible prophecies were already fulfilled, because in my study and history and even like in the Bible, it's like, oh yeah, Jesus said the dead in Christ will rise first. He died. When he came back, all of the dead in Christ rose with them, and they went and visited their family members. So
Yes.
it's like, yeah, this already happened. People are like, no, Jesus hasn't come back. It's not, Christ rose from the grave, and they came and went and visited. That's the Bible prophecy being fulfilled. So my study had got me there for years, until I started experiencing the dead in Christ continuing to rise today.
Ooh, nice.
Then I'm like, okay, it's not it's happening again,
Yes.
So it really ties into the one who was, who is, and is to come.
Yes.
It happened, it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. So and we're a part of that cycle. We're a part of there's two different resurrections that I know of. One of them was like the person almost like, I would say, reincarnating in a body, like that, like John the Baptist is Elijah, like his spirit is with him from birth, and Jesus, with his spirit, but then other spirits come to minister, right? The angels ministering spirits, the dead in Christ rising, resurrecting. The second part of that is those who resurrect or resurrect, but they don't have physical bodies. Those are the spirits of the ones who are continuing to visit us, and it is that of love.
Yes.
There's no remembrance of any former thing. I've wiped away every tear from your eye. So it's not your mother's coming back and she represents the bad times you had, or even how she left or whatever. She only exists in that which is beautiful, which is Christ. All things new, all things beautiful. And for people to be continually experiencing this, it's been wild to know that, it did happen. Like, I'm cool with that because it happened in the Bible for sure, but
it keeps happening.
I'm going to keep happening. Like, look at Paul, and they knew it was going to happen. And then people now, you talk to anybody now, most of Christendom is like, he's coming any day it's going to happen. So you're divorced from it that it already happened, and you're divorced from it's happening, but you're living in the future, right? But from where we are in the now is like, hold on, we have access to anything and anyone, past, present, or future, that is in Christ. And it sounds like you experienced that. So at least a seed was planted in you to know that you do have access to different family members at certain times, but that expands, right?
Yeah.
When your family expands.
Yeah, and I do think, like, one thing Swedenborg writes is how to angels or to beings who are regenerating, that Christ rises daily. It's the dawn. That is the rise of, like, so that is always happening in our spirit. That's what, like, our spiritual growth cycles are having that judgment and resurrection, and just that ongoing cycle.
Yep.
And sort of harking back to something I said earlier about Swedenborg's idea of these levels in us, I really feel like it helps me understand, like, there are, like you described, there's a plurality to the divine, there's a plurality to us and our identities. And so there are parts of me that like don't totally get it, don't know how, like, still are like, I'm not so sure about this whole whatever, what does that mean? Like, they're sort of reticent to let go of the reins and sort of live fully aligned with that sort of, Christ consciousness, if you will, like that higher self, inner self leading. And yet there are more and more parts of me that have had that direct connection. We all share the memory of, like, we had those dreams, we have these experiences like this. The truth continually reveals itself. But the reason why it's not just like an instant aha for us, but we're on a journey, I think it's because we have all these different parts of ourselves that each individually are having their own growth process of needing to awaken to that love and light, and especially the parts that are the most traumatized. Like, I experienced the trauma of losing my mom, and like have been, and then the sort of like negative beliefs or things like that get rooted in me, and like, so then what is that, like, it's a healing journey. And then especially I feel like I don't know if you grew, like, it'd be interesting to know if you grew up in a particular religion or faith, but anyway, like, I've had my own process of having to kind of wrestle with the indoctrination I was given, and then that sort of like shaking it up and thinking about things for myself and having that being brave in that way. And,
well, that seems like, and somebody said this years ago, but it's always resonated with me, of a guy who wasn't Christian, but he mentioned, like, Abraham and all of the patriarchs. He said you have to leave the religion of your fathers, like this thing that you're raised up in. It's like, this isn't working, or at least it isn't working for me anymore, right? And the you got to wrestle with that. It's like, I'm done with this. Like, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I'm gonna leave. Like, it happened to Jesus, it happened to Solomon, it happened to, Jesus is with the Pharisees. He's teaching in the temples and in the synagogues, but then there came a time towards the end of his ministry where he's like, okay, I'm done with you guys. I know, I'm fully convinced that there's no debating with you guys. You guys are already set in your ways and you got it figured out. And first of all, you don't even know the scriptures. And two, you can't see prophecy happening now because I am the prophecy. You guys are still living in the future. The same thing that the way that the Pharisees walked in, what they accused like Jesus and John the Baptist of and all that kind of stuff. They couldn't understand that this was prophecy happening in their time, in their generation. In the same way where we're going through raptures and epiphanies and apocalypses, which is just simply the truth being revealed to you of what's really happening. Someone else would not, it would be foreign language. They're not privy to it because they're concerned with the things of the world. But everyone who is of that level, and I think it's becoming more, they're privy to it. So just, being able to, like, the ego exists for a reason. like demons exist for a reason. I'm in this circle of like a lot of Christian mystics who are trying to convert demons to the light and show them their true nature and stuff, and they want to evolve them, but it's like their name tells you what they do. Like, it's in their DNA. They only want to terrorize people. Well, you know that's not your true identity. Your identity in the light is to, help people or whatever. But them terrorizing people is helping people, because there's a consequence to this. So, like, every entity, every being exists to serve a purpose. Like Satan and the ego and all that has a purpose. So I don't know when, if at all, while we're in this flesh. I mean, Paul and all the other guys continue to talk about this war, and I'm doing things that I hate, and I know I shouldn't do it, but I can't, I just can't seem to overcome because of this fleshly nature, but not my spirit. My spirit is being rejuvenated daily. And they're kind of like, this experience is, one is becoming lighter and the other one is becoming more heavier, and they're separating. It's part of it. Like, my flesh is going back to the earth, but my spirit is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, I don't need this vehicle anymore because I've outgrown it, if you will. So I think that stuff, they all have a job. Like, it's the sovereignty. What does Swedenborg call it? I know me and Curtis talked about it. I call it the sovereignty of God is what I call it. But there's a divine providence. Of like everything in this city. You got to have a consequence. There's no like, you got to beat yourself up, or you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't care. It is spirits that partner with you, that beat you up, that whisper bad things to you, so that you can say, hey, shut up, man. I'm tired of you. No, you're not. You love depression. Yeah, no, I'm done with depression. And shut up. It's not that thing gets cast out or to never to return, but it's lurking, waiting for you to open the door to depression. And it serves a purpose for you to be on the straight and narrow and say, you know what? Yeah, he exists, but I'm not letting him in because I'm a judge and I'm cleaning house. But the beings that I want to let in are compassion, are, this is who I want sitting at my table and ruling this kingdom that we have and we're partnered with. And so there's so many, with Christ having all of those beings within him. Yeah, he was just God. He is only good. No, like, that doesn't, you totally miss it. Like, he came in the likeness of flesh to show you that I can be angry and sin not. That I can be tempted. I can be slapped in the face. Like, his flesh is like the flesh of anyone. Like, but he chose to do righteousness. He chose love. Like, the fact that we look at him as like this divine being or whatever, that was surpassed that. But it says that, like, he took not on the likeness of angels, but he became a man, tempted in every way, to show us that what he did, we can do too, through him and through that. So just, and that's that thought, like, all of it exists and it serves a purpose,
Yeah. I think, like, there's a line that I love from one of Swedenborg's books early on in his multi-volume work, that Secrets of Heaven. But he says, God does not rest until love takes the lead. And that's in the context of the 7 days of creation as being this picture of our spiritual journey, and this, like, to the love taking the lead. And that's what it means to be fully human. And that the way divine providence works is because it is divine love and divine wisdom. And when you speak about, like, people being at your table, or like the parts of ourselves, I sort of think of it as like that love, when we learn to let that love take the lead, it's only that love that knows how to be present to the parts of us that are weak to falling into depression, or are self-harming, or, are any of these things that could easily be, like, sort of tried to muscle your way out of it. But it's like love knows how to be present and actually bring about healing, and that, like, and so Swedenborg says that's the way it works with, he says, God, the divine, doesn't cast anyone into hell. He loves all. It's all love. And then people, in their own free will, either gravitate toward that or want to get the heck away, and like, so it's this natural, that's how judgment happens. It's not God judging, it's God being love and wisdom itself. And then we, judge ourselves in terms of like, it's just, what is it? Are you wanting to open up to that love? Are you willing to surrender to that love? Or are you going to fight against it? And the fighting against it to the point of rejecting love, that's like the demons that really just aren't interested. They're much more willing to, like, as Swedenborg says, we might have like a negative thought pattern, and it's that it aligns with certain evil spirits or demons or something. And so they literally sort of get fed from that. And it's sort of like, it's not even, it can feel sort of malevolent, but it's like, actually, they have no real power over us. And I just feel like it's that presence of love that can come in and then just dispels any of those, evil or whatever, just like those energies that would be trying to feed off of your negative thought patterns and stuff like that. So it's like, it's just that principle of love that's what we can learn more and more how to live in alignment with and see where it leads us.
Everything exists for a reason, but it doesn't mean it has to sit at the dinner table with you, like, like it even tells you, and you mentioned this, earlier, like on the outside of the kingdom exist the dogs and the witches and the dead spirits. And I'm not talking about people when I say witches, guys. These are spirits. Like, they don't get to come in and sit at the table and eat with you. They'll be like animals eating at your table, like putting a dog on the table, or you can't even have the dog in the room with you when you're, where there's business taking place. Like, this is a place of decency and order. But at the other levels where everyone gets in, right, even those spirits, they're used for their purpose. The only thing that exists as an abomination is when you take something that's created for one thing and you use it for the wrong reasons. You've got evil spirits or demons of terror now making decisions about your future. No. No, he's supposed to be there, but on the outskirts as a protector, as one who's like he's fighting against you. He's supposed to be fighting for you. Like, we need warring spirits. We need some grotesque beings that exist that keep the other beings away. What do you think gargoyles are and statues of these monsters? These are protector spirits at the doorkeepers that we can't come anywhere close because that thing's going to get us. But why did they let those guys go through? Because we made peace with them. We've tamed them. We've tamed those parts of our psyche. We've tamed those parts of our flesh the best that we could. So now we're in the kingdom, and now we're not just in there, but we're ascending and going up to the higher levels. All of that stuff exists for a reason. But when you let it run the table, even in a kingdom, looking at the old kingdoms, like, I'm a big jokester. I'm a big prankster. I like to make people laugh. I tell jokes. I make myself look silly to try to get a laugh, because it makes people smile and it cuts the tension in the room. And like, I had to learn to do that as a kid, because I was able to get attention by doing something funny and making the entire class look at me and laugh, or get my mom's attention. So I'm great at it. And so that jester has a place at the king's court.
Nice.
Like, when there's company, come in, get the jester to come in, let him entertain people. Come, do that thing, tell that joke.
Yes.
And like, he has to make everyone laugh. And the king, if he doesn't, it'll cost him his life. They'll kill him.
Right.
Like, you exist to make us laugh. We need him. Come in here, make us laugh. And then he laughs, and he does what he's supposed to do. He's not supposed to be at the table while you're eating, making you laugh, or making decisions in the king's. He doesn't have any wisdom. He only knows one thing: tell a quick joke and get a quick laugh. And so, even though it has a part at my table, and a big part, but you can't let the jester make your decisions. You can't because the jester can also tell like profane jokes. He can also tell like racist jokes, right? If anything that's out of order and used for wrong, right? There's an order in this kingdom, that's like, no, we're not doing that. This is the commandments, this is the rules, this is the code of conduct, and I'm a judge, I'm the king of my body. Outside of me, I got no dealing in that, but over me and who I feed and who gets more and who gets starved.
Yeah.
Get the dog outside. It's not, no. You know what I'm saying? So that whole thing of like, it's all existing on multiple levels within us, you know?
And it all belongs, like you're saying, and it's that, like, the jester doesn't know better, but it can be loved and understood for what it is. And then when love is leading, then it all is integrated. And then you can go with the flow of it, you know, because then when you're having a hard, you know, like in sort of like contemplative meditative practices, it's like you bow to the demons. You thank them because they are being these essential vehicles to show, like, to lead you on your path. And so that, like, the only part of us that can bow genuinely in that way is Christ in us, you know, is that divine love. So
I'm studying this scripturally. I'm not, just because there's so much, like, it's very strange, but this is some of the deep stuff of, like, again, the demons, like, what do? Like the bad spirits, and like once you, like, you tame them, or you get authority to speak to them once you overcome them. So now, I mean, let's just look at it like addiction or whatever, like somebody who's overcome certain kind of addiction, they now have authority to go and help other people get out of addiction.
Yeah.
You're not scared that you may drink. Everyone's drinking around. No, I actually can drink, and I'm okay with it now. I've made peace with it. It was out of alignment, right?
Yeah.
But now that I've made peace, I can go back and I can bring people out. I can lead many sons to glory. Like that's why we're here. He sent me. He's anointed me to preach the gospel, to declare liberty to those who are in captivity. Like that's what we do. So to go back and do that and look at everything in its proper perspective, right? So once you overcome, you get authority to speak to that thing, because now there's an empathy, there's a compassion for those people. I don't have to pretend I didn't come with the church and no, you're my people. Yeah. I'm like Paul. I become all things to all men so that I can win some. Yeah. I know the struggle. To those who are in poverty, listen, hey, I know what it's like to be broke, man. I know, man, go find, if you know what it's like to be in poverty, when you'll see a homeless man sitting outside a restaurant, you'll invite him to go in and sit down and eat with you, because you know what it's like to be in his shoes. And Jesus told his disciples, listen, I am in all of these individuals. Thank you for seeing me and honoring the good in that. There's a compassion, there's something in you. And I literally just had that happen to me, where I was trying to get a homeless guy to come eat with us, and my friend was like, no, don't bring him in here. And I was like, I honored my friend because I didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable, you know. But when I left, I was like, hey man, come sit at the table. Like, I'm gonna pay for your food or whatever. He didn't ask me for anything. He didn't beg. But it's like, I know what it's like not to have. I know what it's like to be addicted. I know what it's like to need prayer. I know what it's like to need a friend when there's no friends, you know, these things. So you have authority to operate in that sphere. Like, if you want to cast out a demon, like, if you're friends with the demon or you know them, you can identify it. Right. It might not even be a casting out. And starve that demon out. Some of these only come out with prayer and fasting. Quit feeding it. It's not going to leave you. You're going to be tempted tomorrow. Yes. Like, there's alcohol everywhere. Cast the alcohol demon out of me. No. We're going to minister to the hurt. And that part of you that's broken, that is trying, this is just a symptom. But once you deal with the root cause, that symptom just begins to get smaller and smaller and smaller as the beautiful things in your life are glorified and multiplied. But there's this, I'm talking about bringing, you know, having authority and going there and being able to speak to the captives. But also when it's time to go to war, when it's time to do other things, that when you need these spirits to help you. Now, I don't have it figured out by any means, but I do see it there in the scriptures where Jesus says to make friends with mammon. Like, those spirits and those gods, they have a rightful place in the kingdom. It's not at the table, but it's when it's ready for the men to go to war or to defend the city. We don't need the peacemakers. Please leave us. No, they're getting their heads cut off.
Yes.
We need warriors, protectors who are going to go out there, and just by looking at them, the majority is going to turn around and run because this place is fortified. But I'm starting to see that, first of all, in the scriptures, and I think studying it in all the other Greek cultures and Egyptian texts and those things, like, you're starting to see the nuances where these things that were trying to kill you are now here to benefit you and serve you. Now they listen to you. Now you can say, hey, come here. I need you to just go stand at the door. I need you to go collect my money. Like, there are beings, that's what they do. They're collectors. They only collect. They don't want to hear the gospel. They don't want to rationalize. They want to collect things. Give them something to collect. Like, don't send an angel who's here to protect you while you sleep to go collect things while you sleep, because now you're not protected. This stuff is scripture. It's scriptural, and the higher ups know this stuff. They know the stars. Jesus says, like, right now I can call down 10,000 angels and they can destroy this place, but I'm not. I'm going to move with grace and compassion. I can. Who are those 10,000? He had made peace with them. He has given authority. He honored them.
I love it.
He saluted them. It says, salute the angels, salute the saints. That word that's used for salute, it's not just saying, hey, how you doing? The salute is like, hey, I'm going to buy you a meal.
Right, yeah.
Let me talk to you while I'm buying you this meal.
Right.
I know who I am. You're not going to
Respect.
convince me. I'm not scared of you. Everybody else is scared of you. But I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of it. I'm no expert in it. I see it. Can you speak to any of that? It's pretty far out. It's scary to, you're using demons. You're working with demons. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it freaks Christians out a lot.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have as much of a tradition, I think, or custom, like, as I am aware of it, of embracing those parts. But this is where I feel like Eastern traditions really give me insight to that, because there's even sort of there's something divine in even the worst things, but the divine that's in that is the power that providence can see, and what good it can do, or what use it can serve.
Yeah.
I was thinking of this phrase, like, the poison becomes the medicine.
Yeah.
And like,
exactly.
And it's like it makes me think of just the Buddhist teaching of a bodhisattva, like the part of a spiritual warrior is the part of you that has that connection to love and tenderness, and it's the part that can sit amongst countless demons and not be afraid, and has this, this mindfulness wisdom of like this larger trust in the bigger picture, and can give that, the insight that's necessary to know what needs to be done next in any moment. So that's like, that's what it brings up for me. And just thinking about how that, and that's a good example of the way that I feel like I draw on all these different traditions, and they echo and, resonate with each other and just create this beautiful picture.
So I would say, and this isn't to degrade, because I think it makes it even more beautiful, but like the Bible almost being like a compilation of all the world traditions and all the truths, if there's any truth to it, like, I think that it touches on it to a degree, versus it being something original, like it is like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and the things that maybe you didn't need, or to tell this overall story of the gospel message, right? The redemption of humanity, right? Of humans being able to go back home and go to heaven, or whatever the case is. Like, it seems like the Bible is a best of all of the world traditions, and because you can't study it, but like, there's this, what is it? Sole Deo Gloria, or whatever, like Sol Deo Gloria. It was like Bible alone, like we only need the Bible.
Oh, yes.
And like, good luck. Like, if you think you only need like the Bible and you don't need to know what those words meant, look at what
Yes.
religion has done and how many people
Yeah.
are dying. And if it was legal, you would still continue to kill, your brothers and sisters. And but yeah, the Bible being truth that is like spread abroad and it's applicable. How do you look at that with being able to study Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever Greek philosophy and see Christ in the Bible in it?
It's the same thing of what I feel like we've been getting at, where it's like the Bible is a text, and there have just been these cultures and groups that have claimed it, have claimed authority, have claimed, possession of it, when it's stories. And so this way that I like the idea of freeing it from any sort of like particular claims, like people holding like, oh, well, if you find
exclusivity or something, right?
Yeah, and like if you find spiritual nutrition from the Bible, then you must be Christian or we don't want you here, like how dare you or something. I just feel like it's because there's such infinite depth in the Bible, and in terms of like when you're getting into it, it's just such colorful stories that represent like are a picture of the cultures at those time periods when these stories were being collected. Like it's our human heritage. And for me, I do feel like I think the only way we can get that connection is when we go to it for ourselves and let go of any of the like cultural like expectations that would say, oh, you need to think about it this way or that way. Like really try to clear your mind and just engage with it. And so in that way, I do think the Bible is like a really awesome spiritual text. And this is just me speaking personally,
like a blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely. But I think that blueprint is something that is, that's the divine blueprint. It's the same blueprint that's if we knew how to read it, it's in the natural world, if we knew how to. So I think it's incredibly useful because it's this whole collection and has this whole arc. And as Swedenborg says, it's written in correspondences. So like everything has meaning. So I feel like it's like crucial in a lot of ways, but I also feel like the sacred texts and traditions from other religions that predate Christianity, or like go even like the Vedas, or just these ancient, originally oral,
any text.
Yeah, oral songs.
Yeah,
they were sung.
Hymns,
sung your scriptures. That is, enchanted, and like the what we have of those, I think also we can understand them according to correspondences as well. And then even the stories like the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata, like these epics of the Indian traditions. But then again, even like other ancient stories, so to me, it is everywhere. And that's something Swedenborg describes as like the divine makes sure that the means of salvation, he's using that, very Christian term, but that the means of liberation, of that freedom of connection to love and wisdom is available everywhere. Like nobody exists who doesn't have access to the means of salvation. Like that's one of the things of divine providence is like, no matter where you are, there's that connection. And so whether, whatever mirrors you have around you, there are mirrors that are going to help you see the blueprint of the story that's unfolding in your life, in your, on your path. And that's how it becomes so universal, and why we can kind of geek out about it like this, because it's like, and see, I guess that's the thing, is I feel like more and more in terms of this cloud of witnesses, this community, I'm just interested especially when I connect with people of other faiths or people of other faith backgrounds or no faith background, but we've all kind of come to the same sense of it, like we all just sort of get it. And then there's just this fun of,
and then there's the ones, but at the same time, just like your religion tradition, there's those who don't.
Yes,
have no
definitely.
idea what the hell you're talking about. You're actually like an enemy because you're more accepting.
Yes, for sure.
But that's how you know, man. I've been pondering this. I've done the one thing that like my religion told me we couldn't do, and it's just to talk to other people, to talk to a Muslim, to talk to a Hindu. And the more I talked to them people, I was like, I used to study them and talk to them, but only the differences. Okay, they believe this, they believe that, so that when we talk, I can debate them. No, your Quran says this, man. And I knew everything that was like the nuances. Little knowing that your text has, contradictions or whatever that people are trained to pull out of yours. And now I'm studying how to say, no, it doesn't. It's just you don't understand. And these wars and stuff, and we're taught. That's what they teach you. Like they have to corner the market. And once you like just show up for the conversation to try to even look for commonality, or at least not even look for differences, let's just talk. Like, hey, what do you believe? You guys do that? Cool. And then the more you're like, y'all do that, we do that. You guys believe that? So do we. But a lot of times it takes that individual who is your mirror, who is like, it is you in another religion that grew up, that went to that church, and it was, conditioned, but there was something deeper in them that was like, you know what, God is bigger than the religion of my fathers. Like I can see God. There's certain 5% of Muslims and stuff that say they honor and to every Messiah, to every tradition, they respect them. That's why you hear a Muslim anytime that most of them will say any Moses or Jesus, when they say it, they say peace be upon him. Because it's like, listen, I honor the good in what they represented. What happens if Christianity and this religion will begin to honor people who are different, and just honor it and remember it? And that's what I've done, just with conversation. But as a student, having little pieces, and the more and the more and the more we talk, I'm like, there's no way you didn't go to my church. There's no way you didn't. Like we're saying the same things, and they're not even Christian. Like in my head, they know something about me, or we listened to the same preachers when we were younger. They don't know anything about the Bible, anything. The Bible to them represents what their text represented to me. Something offensive, something that is oppressive, and blah, blah, blah. But hold on, really? Your text is that beautiful. God speaks to you, and wow, and goodness, and the personifications of the archetypes. So you mean to tell me that Hinduism doesn't worship, 7,000 gods? No, as the Christians try to make fun of them, we have one, they have 7,000. It's like, no, they're all personifications or archetypes of one.
Yes.
Wow, we have the names of God, and he has many names, and he has these, maybe those names are different gods, and we're getting into that now. Like, wow, we all these major world religions have been, saying something they have different nuances. Come on, like they take it, they have a piece of God's spirit, God's heart, God's body, and they have worked with it for hundreds, if not thousands of years in a certain way. And this way it is bigger. It's way bigger. They are a part of God's body, of the lost sheep of the house of Israel that's scattered throughout the four corners. And Christ comes to bring them all back together, back into the fold. And we think that that's just our tradition.
Right, the many nations coming to the mountain. I think of like the word that I come back to is just spiritual reality. Like the fact that it's not like, how do you believe or how do you make sense of it, but all different people, no matter where they are, whatever their faith background or no faith background, it's like there is a spiritual reality alive inside of them, and we can use these sacred texts as a means to learn more about that. And different sacred texts are going to give you new treasures, different treasures that are so, amazing. but that the spiritual reality is, we did a show on Off the Left Eye once called The Spiritual Reality Behind All Faiths, because it's like there are things that manifest as being true no matter where you go, and it is that principle of love and wisdom, and that is what the divine is, and that we are becoming receptive of that in ourselves, and then how we, take action, live out our purpose in the world from that connection. And like, so that's like the blockiest way you can put it, but then you could cover that, you could understand all of that through the Christian tradition, or all of that through the Vedic traditions, or all of that through whatever, the Muslim and Jewish, Baha'i, and, Sikh, and everything that they're...
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, right. Poetry, it really does. Harry Potter, like that is, James Campbell is, tapped into all this with mythology and everything, but that's like, that's how I connect to it. And it goes back to what you're saying about deception. And I was thinking of like bringing it all the way back to this idea of prophecy that we started with, which is like this worrying about being deceived, is people are also quick to say, you are a false prophet, false prophet. But with how we're talking about the Bible and how Swedenborg writes about it, you don't take any word alone at face value. It doesn't mean one thing. It has this meaning that, is dynamic, and just the whole idea of, are you talking about a dog? No, I'm talking about a dog. Do you get it? Like a dog outside the city, not just a dog, whatever. Like you could get to like, think about what it means inside the land. How's your land doing? A prophet, this fear of false prophets is like, well, I would think a false prophet is only somebody trying to teach, prophesy without that connection to love, like that doesn't have that ultimate, isn't coming from that love origin point. And so if you understand it that way, then it's like, there's no worry about people being false prophets, because everyone can be made to prophesy when they're lifted up and have that connection with that love and wisdom that comes. And then that is a gift, and it can bless other people and can, feed into the chorus of the divine wanting to lift all of us up. So,
so cool. Like I said, like, you're deceived. Isn't that cool that God still loves me and he's still using me, and he's still like, I know it's a sharp word to somebody, to agree with I'm deceived, but the Bible says like the whole world has been deceived by the evil one.
Right.
Like everyone.
Let's just get that done with. We're all deceived. Now what?
Until there's more light in you. Like, oh wow, he really did love everybody. Huh? Who'd have thunk it?
Exactly.
Just because you don't love yourself and you're projecting that God doesn't love people who look like you. It's so crazy. So it's all deception. Like, however many, to think that you've reached the pinnacle, there's layers and levels, and people don't believe that though. Like they think like it is what it says it is. Like it only means what it says. Like the kingdom of heaven is coming in the clouds.
Yep.
Okay, but you do
and
know
there's certain
clouds aren't
like,
when you look up what you think a cloud is, that's not a cloud, right? A dog isn't. Jesus called that lady a dog. Like, that was an expression, right? No, he was talking to the dog next to her. Like, what? We come up with these weird theories, and we all do it, to like make sense of our confusion, of our chaos. Like,
right.
This is what he really meant. And it'll be some, like the syncretism thing. Like a lot of people, I don't know if I've said it, but I've been like open to ask people, especially early on, because it scared me to see like, the Bible prophecies of like things Jesus did, like being done thousands of years before him. Like even I'm reading like the Egyptian Book of the Dead. He's like, Amen's like, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Like, my word is truth. And it echoes Jesus. I'm a devotee of Jesus. But now I can see the light and honor it and amen, because hold on, this came thousands of years before him, and it's the same. But I used to like ask people, like, what do you think about it? And they said the devil did it first, because he knew what God was going to do. So he did it first through these other religions to trick people. And I'm like, hold on, whoever did it first, like, they're the originators, man. Like, if they said it first, like, I think we're going to take it and make it our own. And that never sit right with me, but it's an easy, like, cognitive dissonance excuse. Hey, what about, one of the other Egyptian prophets where, like, they had light and energy coming off the hem of their garment and people would touch it and get healed. Like, what about that? Well, it's because the enemy knew that Jesus would do it and they did it first. That never sat right with me. And that's always been that seeker that you got to have an excuse, though. You got to be able to talk to these people or combat or convince yourself of, like, why this isn't calling you deeper. And I never could. And it always called me deeper until I can honor it and see God and my tradition in all of those traditions.
And I feel like that's the way, like, if you're ever, just like the Bible is a picture of what's inside of us, like, struggling with other people, it's reflective of parts of ourselves, like, so it's, and having compassion for those, like, okay, what kind of a part of myself, I feel like it comes from fear, like, we can begin to feel it in ourselves of, like, what part in me feels so this need to really know what it is and have it make sense and have it, like, fit within this box in this tidy way, like, it's afraid. It's, like, probably a really little part that did need somebody to, like, say, give it order in its life and in it, like, give it that to build trust, so you can have compassion and know, and you're going to grow up and there's going to be this whole, horizons out there that you can't imagine, but you're going to feel safe when you get there because, the love never goes away. The love is trustworthy. And so, like, Swedenborg even talks about people's faith changing and how that's such, like, an intimate, tender process because it's connected to our spiritual life. Like, to Swedenborg, we are made of love and wisdom. Like, what is the substance of our spiritual body? It is love and wisdom. And love and wisdom, that corresponds to light, and, like, you can get a sense of it in the way light is both heat and light is energy all at the same time. So it's like, that is our self. And so what we believe is, like, a life force to us, and you can't just, so Swedenborg, like, describes how angels and the divine in our lives now and in the afterlife, it's like, they're not about coming in and being like, get rid of all this old stuff, like, let me tell you what's true, like, now it's like, no, it's this slow, loving, gentle process of, like, here's where you, like, maybe think about it this way, like, we're gonna work, bend and not break. That's that whole, of leading people, because it's a wild thing to go from, like you said, the faith of your fathers, like, that's the land, that's the only thing you've known, that's where you live. And so to be brought out of that to live in a new place is terrifying to parts of ourselves if they aren't given that assured or learn to trust the reality of the safety of love that's inside of them. So
it's culture shock, but again, being open and honest about your story, people say, oh wow, it can be done. Like, once they see it, then they know that, hey, I'm living below what's possible. I'm called to something greater, and there it is. That's all Jesus represents. I'm called to something greater, and there it is. And so that's judgment. Because we had excuses. Well, my mother was this, or my father was this, or I come from, where was Jesus from? What did they say when they found out where he was from? Nazareth. What good can come from Nazareth? Like, there's nothing good. It's like, I'm going to show you what good can come out of this. I'm going to make something come out of it. So, like, my spiritual understanding now of God's judgment and what he represented biblically, like, to the Pharisees, because the Pharisees believed and hoped for, like, the same thing that most Christians do now. that
Yes,
God's going to come out of the sky with fire and hailstones and brimstone, and his angels are going to destroy the wicked. Maybe one day. I'm not going to tell you that on a physical place this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But because of you are so sold that that's the only way, you miss that the wrath of God and the fire and the righteous indignation of the Lord that's coming came in the form of a humble servant who chose love. And he's standing right next to you, showing you what's possible, showing you that you are now choosing on your own free will to live below your means, to live below your standard, because he's calling you up higher, because now you can't say we can't do it, because we got one who's come from Nazareth where nothing good can come from this place. He's got more wisdom, he's got more light, he's got more love, he's got more grace, he's got more faith, he's got more power, he's got more authority. When he talks, people listen. We got to convince them, and they don't believe us, and something's up. He's doing it the right way. Like, that was the dreadful day of the Lord, when Jesus came as a humble servant and you wanted to kill him, and he didn't hurt nobody, harm nobody. Like, when I saw that, they're asking him about these prophecies. When are they going to happen? When does it happen? It's like, it's already happening. You're just blind. You can't see it. What do you mean it's blind? I'm standing right in front of you. I'm teaching in your synagogues. You can't see me? That you are like, I'm judgment. Because watch what happens when you kill me. This whole place is going to be destroyed, and you are reaping this eternal judgment upon yourselves. And that was to those demon spirits of that land that they had partnered with and allowed to live within them. It wasn't those individuals. If there was any light, if there was any hope, if there was anything good in them, that's eternal. I don't know that those Pharisees had any of that, to be honest with you. There's different types of beings here, right? So I don't know if they were mingled with good and bad, but we are. So the judgment of the wicked, and they say, TruthSeekah, you're wicked. You're wicked. Yeah. No, I may have some wickedness in me, but I'm at war with it. And I'm trying my best to eradicate it and to fight back the forces of darkness so that I can have more love and more grace in my life. And that is the human experience. Yeah. And in Christ, his light, his love, his grace, his mercy, his forgiveness is the way that you do that. And that's judgment on those dark forces. Guess what? You guys got to go. You can't live here no more. Why? Please, not before the appointed time. No, you got to get out of this man. You got to go. You got to leave him alone. Like, to understand that.
That's the freedom. Freedom from captivity, freedom from bondage, freedom from, all of that. It's amazing. There's this really amazing thing I was reading in Swedenborg recently about just how it's just the human way, the way our minds works, that we have that outer self level that is always going to get it mixed up. It's always going to turning other people into others, thinking that we're separate, thinking that it's about us versus them or whatever. Like, it reads the Bible or it reads any sacred text, and it just interprets it in this very literal either or, black and white, just like, need to get it right way and fixated. And that's just that's just the nature of that level. It's also the level of our minds that can really distinguish things, like can study, sciences and whatever, just like all that stuff. And then the inner meaning, what Swedenborg was writing, is that the inner meaning of scripture, which is like when you see the meaning inside of all the different pieces and how it's that reflection of yourself and your spiritual life and this revelation of love and wisdom. It's like, when you're getting that is the next level up of your mind. That's the part that is understanding and even able to see that inner meaning in scripture. So our consciousness is vacillating between, if you're having a hard day, it might be that your consciousness is just kind of like just on this outer level, but it's possible to lift up and connect to that.
Once you know it's possible, right? So now you're like condemning yourself, even though there's no condemnation in Christ, right? Yeah. But because you are not at the place you can be, it's either condemnation or it's an invitation.
Yes.
Hey, you want it? You know what's available. and there's beautiful things here, but the condemnation leaves too, though. Like, you may beat you beat yourself up, or any of the demons. God is not beating you up. Like, the angels are not beating you up. Like, where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. And that's been a very weird experience lately too, to be out of sync of, like, I know it takes this now, and now I kind of step down, and I'm like, oh, in the past it would take months, if not weeks or days or whatever, but now it's like in a moment. No, we're still here. You're good.
Yes.
What? No, you're good. Like, get back on track. Like, whatever you've done, you did that to your flesh. You haven't sinned against us. You sinned against your flesh. Like, you being able to receive, and your mind to be able to work right and guilt free, and to walk without condemnation. When you put yourself back under that, that's on you. Like, we don't look down on you any differently. Those scriptures started to make sense. Like, there is no condemnation. Like where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. Like, even more.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
And I'm trying to beat myself up. I'm trying to wallow. Oh, it's going to take months, and oh, now I could just eat whatever I want to eat. No, you can't. Get your stuff together and quit tripping. Just ain't. You're not, 17 no more. You're not 25 no more. You're not 35 no. Like, get your stuff together. This is a new level, and you're ready. And that has been an experience. It really has. Because we wallow in our pity. Oh, I can't.
Yes.
I used to be able to hear so good. Well, shut up and listen, and we're still speaking. We're always, like, stars are moving. Life is happening. The kingdom is life. And as long as there's life, we're anywhere that life goes. That has been something recently that's just been pretty cool, I'd say. But there's more riding on it. So now you want to say, you know what? I'm not going to sin or break the law because we can. You say, God forbid. Yea, we establish the law. Yeah. Because we know that we're operating at new laws now. Yes. That the other people who aren't where you are right, they're not operating at that. Yeah. They're still, like, beating themselves up or doing it out of works or thinking that God will love them more or whatever. But once there's a new level of, like, okay, I'm giving you this truth, I'm giving you this information, and you're not who you were. That's a graduation to a new level. Yeah. Swedenborg describes that just in the picture of an egg, like, that we're always hatching. All the spiritual phases we go through is like the previous one is an egg to the next one. And so we're always going through this. That's the cycle of rebirth, is we really are different when we're at this new phase, this new level of consciousness, and it's an ongoing process. So it's true. The revealing of the true nature of the flesh, the shedding of the flesh, which is the apocalypse, right? Yeah. Like, again, we think the apocalypse is whatever, fear and dread and bombs and whatever. I don't know what people think, but you've seen it on television and movies and that or pictures, and that's what you see. Yeah. So it's been awesome to be able to re-envision, to experience this stuff, and like, okay, we got to make images that show what this really looks like. Yeah. Because that's not, now we tricked everybody through images and vain imaginations to see what it looks like to experience an apocalypse, which is the true you being revealed. If that's good or bad. Because this is like, apocalypse is something that's happening to everything and everyone. Like, especially in the mainstream and like Hollywood and the elite. They're being revealed. They're being revealed too. Yeah. A cloak is being pulled, and you get to see them for what they really are. What they were doing in darkness is being revealed in the light. So you, as a being of light who is praying and interceding and contemplating about God and trying to do good works and these kind of things, like, when it's time for you to be revealed and take the veil away, which is the only thing that apocalypse means. That's all it means, is to remove the veil. Oh wow, you're a manifested son, and I'm calling on. The reason I pulled the veil away, because I need you to go out. Yes. And people need to see your light. They need to feel it. They need to experience it. And that's happening. That is happening. It's not going to happen. If it's not happening to you right now, it's going to happen. Yeah. But if you believe it and you receive it, you got to bring those prophecies to the now, because it is happening without measure.
Well said.
Mm.
I'm feeling like I've got to wrap us up.
Great.
Need to go get some food. Are you where are you? What time zone are you in?
I'm in Central in Alabama.
Okay, Alabama. Nice.
Yeah.
I'm in outside of Philadelphia.
Awesome. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I love these. I hate to call them interviews. We had these discussions, conversations. And their journeys. I feel like there's certain places where like attracts like, and there's resonance. There's like certain things. Trust me, I've been on those podcasts. Maybe I've said some of it today, where you say something and it's like they don't know how to respond, and it's just like, okay, but you're playing tennis or whatever. You can go back and forth.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? What about this? And as long as you got the what ifs, there's never like, no, that's not what that means. It's like, hey, if you believe it, it is what it means to you in your world, in your kingdom. So I really enjoyed.
This has been so fun, especially like I don't know, it's not often that I get to talk to somebody so familiar with the Bible and yet thinking about it in this much more open-minded way. So that's just like super
I've gotten
fun.
people on here and trying to share some of this stuff,
Yeah.
and they're like scholars, and they're like, no, that's not good. But it's like, if you're a scholar, you're married to this, though.
Yeah.
You're still not, even though you're open to a different perspective, you're married to that perspective.
Yeah.
You're not married to the one right under it, And so I've done that, but it is cool. That's how you know in the spirit, because that only a Sith deals in absolutes, and that's a Star Wars quote.
That's great.
And you're only a Sith, only the evil ones. So
yep. All revelation.
I'm gonna check out your music. I haven't heard your music yet. Like I said,
oh my gosh.
I was scrolling and trying to find stuff on you, and I found your interviews, and I saw those videos, but I was like, that's not her.
I know.
But now they are. So I'm gonna go listen to the newest record. I'm gonna check that out. One question I had about
my email, or
I believe so. Yeah.
Something?
Yeah. Well, and I'll check. I'll listen to it, and if there's something that you're working on that you think you can get me on for my hip hop or my singing or whatever, and we'll do a collab. Send it to me. And the same way for me, I'll listen to some of the newer stuff that I'm going to be working on, and anything that I'm like, I'm gonna get Chelsea on this. She'll be perfect, because you got to hear it. Like,
so
it's
fun.
Part of that being a visionary. But let me ask you this before we jump off: the Confident Hope, like in the Bones. Like, what book is that from? I know you said the Apocrypha, but do you know which book? Yeah,
so it's Sirach or Sirach. It's
oh my God. What is it? Sirach.
Is that one of them? Really?
I'm not showing my book. Sirach 428. I've got it tatted on my chest. Yeah.
Which one is that? What verse is that?
428. Strive for the truth until death, and the Lord shall fight for thee.
Nice.
I read that and I was like, yeah. Well, that's awesome.
My gosh.
So you have Sirach as a book for you.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it's Sirach, and it's I'm trying to think. I feel like it's not far from that number. I'm trying to think of what chapter and verse it is. I just don't have it right in my mind, but it's this beautiful refrain, because it just sings a song of what all the different prophets did, and it goes through. And at the very end it says, may the bones of the 12 prophets send forth new life from where they lie, and for they comforted the people of Jacob and delivered them with confident hope. So yeah, Sirach.
And that's happening. That's happening.
It's happening. Oh my gosh, super fun. And
So let people know where they can go listen to your music and check out your Swedenborg work and everything that you're doing there too. Go ahead and plug your stuff. Let people know where the best way to keep up with you and all that good stuff.
Great. Well, you can check out Off the Left Eye, offthelefteye.com or youtube.com/offthelefteye for the YouTube channel directly. And then Swedenborg.com is you can find all the books and lots of information about Swedenborg there. Myself, chelrose.com, I think, will get you to an active website. I haven't thought about it in a while. But then my album, Confident Hope, the name is Chelsea Rose Odhner. I'm on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube. It's everywhere, distributed everywhere. So you can listen to the songs or download the whole album. And then Jonathan Rose is the name of my father, and his music. His album is Clear Shining After Rain. So I've got a couple of tracks I wrote that are on there too. And that's another great collection. So that's everywhere.
Awesome. I'm ready to check it out. And heck yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. I'll send you an email or email me. And when this goes up, I'll send it out too. Chelsea, thank you so much for hanging out. Really enjoyed it so much. You be blessed, my friend. Can't wait to speak with you again.
Thank you so much, TruthSeekah. It's been such a good time. Really, really loved it.
All right, my friend. Many blessings. Thank you.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.